to all of you, and certainly not to me. He is the Member of Parliament for Pine Ridge. He is also the Chairman of the Hotel Corporation Board. Ladies and gentlemen, the man who led the MacPac in Pine Ridge, the Member of Parliament for Pine Ridge, the Honorable Frederick McAlpine.
Thank you so much, Madam President. Let us begin in our traditional way as island folks and as colonial folks, and that would be for us to stand as we prepare for a word of prayer. Let us pray. Our Father and our God, we thank you for this day that you have made, that you have allowed us to see. We are cognizant of the fact that it is in you we live, we move, and we have our very being. We do not take life for granted, but we are indeed thankful that you've given us life, and we trust that it would be more abundantly. We thank you that you have favored us to be in this place at this time. We ask that you would indeed bless us as a community, as a nation, and as a people. Give us innovative ideas. Give us an entrepreneurial spirit. Give us a vision for this island and indeed this country. Bless our endeavors. Bless our deliberations. There is wisdom, there is knowledge, but as we glean today, grant to us understanding in the field of technology. And now, God, as a people, may the road we trod lead us to our God as we seek to march on as a people and as a country. We ask all these blessings in no other name, but in the name of Christ we pray. Let everyone say. Now we want you to keep standing as we, at this time, will begin the commencement of our national anthem. Lift up your head to the rising sun, Bahama land. March on to glory, your bright banners waving high. See how the world march the manner of your bearing. Pledge to excel through love and unity, pressing onward, march together to a common loftier goal. Steady sunward, though the weather has the wide and treacherous shore. Lift up your head, rising sun, Bahama land, till the road you've trod leads on to your God. March on, Bahama land. Thank you. Before you're seated, I want you to put your hands, let's just get a little aerobics going in our hands. Come on, I want you to clap because you got up this morning. Clap because you got the sight in your eyes, the hearing in your ears, the smell in your nose, the movement of your limbs. Come on, you can do better than that. Come on, come on, come on. Clap if you're just happy to be alive. If I was in another place, I would say, this is the day that the Lord has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. Now, Before you take your seat, just in case you didn't do it, and as folks are still making their way in, I want you to introduce yourself to the person next to you by giving them your name and saying, "My name is Frederick McAlpine, and welcome to the summit." That's it. Shake somebody's hand on the back of you. That's it. Introduce yourself. Begin your networking right here and right now. Let folks know who you are. Now you should feel a lot better. Now I want you to once again turn to the neighbor next to you, look them in the eye, and if you can't look them in the eye, look them in the forehead, and just smile. Just smile at them. That's going to be the person you're going to be sitting next to for the next hour, so get to know them and be pleasant with them. Thank you once again. We're so happy to have in our midst our host of this summit in the person of Senator the Honorable Kwesi Thompson, Minister of State in the Office of the Prime Minister. We're also delighted and extremely happy to have joining us from Nassau. He's very busy, and we're so delighted to have him, the Minister for National Assurance and Public Service, the Honorable Brenzel Roll. The illustrious lady that spoke before I got up and ably moderated on yesterday, and that is none other than the President of the Senate, the Honorable Catherine Forbes Smith. And then we have the Member of Parliament for Central Grand Bahama, the Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Works, and the person of the Honorable Hiram Lewis. Happy to have the President of the Port Authority in the person of Mr. Ian Roll. All of our civil servants in their prospective places. Come on, give them a hand as well. And indeed, our out-of-town guest who has blessed us and have been able to intellectualize us as in regards to technology. Let's give them a hand. If you haven't done so already, we wish for you to go on your telephones, smartphones, tablets, and download the Grand Bahama Technology Summit 2017. Please download it. You can do so in your Play Store or your Google Store or wherever you go to get your apps. And please, we would love you to do that for us. Also, if you have not yet done so, you need to get your business card or your name in the Alive box, because they're going to be giving away a Samsung 8 Plus. Now you want that phone, if only for the camera. I know of what I speak. I have one myself. The camera is good. Do I have a witness in here? So if you don't have a Samsung 8, you're missing out. So get your opportunity. You can get involved or get an opportunity to receive such a gift by getting your business card and dropping it in the Alive box. And they'll also be giving away a Mi-5 device as well on this morning. At this time, to officially welcome you, we're going to invite Mr. Harcourt Brown, the Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister here in Grand Bahama. Let's give him a hand as he comes.
Slight adjustment here. Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, come on, you can do better than that. Good morning, one and all, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, welcome to what we know will be yet another very, very exciting day here at the Grand Bahama Technology Summit. For those of us that were here yesterday, I'm sure you will agree with me that we had a very exciting, a very thought-provoking day yesterday. And I'm sure you would agree with me that we are here today with considerable anticipation. We started out the day with a very exciting presentation by none other than the president of the Grand Bahama Port Authority himself, Mr. Ian Roll. And you know, it's amazing the things that the Grand Bahama Port Authority are doing. We talked about smart metering. One of the things that President Roll talked about that was very exciting was also the virtual town hall meeting. How many of us remember that? It is an exciting initiative that will allow us to be a part of what is taking place at the Port Authority, and it will allow our voices to be heard in a clear, concise, and a comfortable way. And so for that, we are very, very, very grateful. And then we heard from our minister, and I don't want to cut you short, Ian, because there were so many other things that you talked about, but unfortunately, my 5 minutes doesn't allow me to cover everything. And then the minister came on, and he charged us. And that exuberance and that excitement transferred throughout the rest of the day. And then the Prime Minister came in. And you know, the Prime Minister tried so hard to be so balanced in terms of his love for the entire Bahamas, as the Prime Minister ought to have been. But he made it clear to us that this initiative is dear to his heart, and that he loves Grand Bahama, and that he fully supports what we are doing here in Grand Bahama in terms of making Grand Bahama, and we're going to accomplish it. We're going to do it, the technology hub for the Bahamas. And so we heard about a lot of things yesterday, and time just doesn't allow us to go through everything that we heard of, but our brainstorming and our collaboration, the demonstrations, all of the facilitators and presenters yesterday caused us to recognize that there were some key points and key elements coming out of our discussions. We talked about education. We talked to the students. We heard from the students. There was an interactive exchange where persons were able to ask questions and get answers to the questions. We talked about the fact that when it comes to our thrust to establish Grand Bahama as a technology hub, that it's not going to be a case of one size fits all. We talked about IoTs. We brainstormed and we talked about the fact that it's going to take a collaborative effort on the part of the government and private sector stakeholders. We talked about location, and what that means, and how that can benefit us. We talked about a number of things yesterday, but I want you to bear in mind that as the Office of the Prime Minister, we went to great pains to ensure that every presentation was recorded, that all of our discussions and all of our deliberations for posterity purposes and to enable us to make the kinds of decisions that need to be made in order to move this initiative from a conceptualization to reality. Every effort is being taken. We want to congratulate Keen Eye Media for the assistance that they've rendered thus far and shall continue to render to us. They're doing an excellent job, and all of the other technicians in the room that are doing their part to ensure that we capture everything that is being said. Because once this day is completed, then the real work starts. So we want to thank you We look forward to a very exciting day, a very interactive day. We welcome all of you here, and let's put our best foot forward, and let's make this. And before I end, let me just again remind you, and Minister will more than likely do this in his wrap-up later, that we are going to treat you to a reception later on this evening at a taste of Port Lucayan, and we want all of you to be there, because that's how we're going to close out in grand Bahamian style. Okay? And I should mention, yes, that KB is going to be there. Ira Store and the Spank, oh my Lord. So for those of you that are from out of town and you don't know what it means to knock the conch style, or to mash the roach, or to skull, we want you to be a part of this cultural expression called a taste of Lucayan. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a very exciting day. We're looking forward to some wonderful presentations this morning. And God bless you. And I can't wait to get started. So thank you. I'll get out the way now.
I'm one of those to confess that, having been a 60s baby, and that means having been born in the 60s, I'm still learning about technology. I'm not one of those who are afraid to say, if I don't know, I tell you I don't know, and I put myself in the position to learn. Because I think a more dangerous person is the person who pretends to know and don't know and try to convince all of us that they do know. That's a worse situation to be in. Do I have an amen out there? But one thing I've noticed as I'm learning, this generation behind the 60s babies like myself, sometimes we get on their case and say, boy, they don't have the patience, which sometimes is true. In many instances, they're spoiled, which is true. They don't know how to play rondons and Red Rover and 1, 2, 3 red light. Y'all remember when we used to do that? But now they're inundated. They don't even go outside and play because it's all on the computer. But you know what's amazing, President of the Grand Bahama Port Authority? If any of our adults, not all of you, because some of you are well savvy in this regard, but if I have a problem with my phone, my tablet, or my computer, see, I believe open confession is good. The rest of y'all can pretend like y'all don't do this. But if you call your teenager or call your primary student child, they always seem to have a way to figure these things out and make us look ignorant to this technology thing. Why y'all looking at me like I'm crazy? And I often say, for those of you who do not know, my first calling is a preacher. And as a preacher, I often say to the congregation, it's a dangerous thing to put a smartphone in the hand of a dumb person. Y'all ain't saying nothing. But there are some people in here who are the future, who we are depending on, who may not grasp totally the maths, the English, the science, but even the folks who have not been academically inclined. And this is what we need to think about, who have even left school only with a letter saying that they have attended school, but put a tablet in their hand, put a smartphone in their hand, and you recognize how savvy they are. Some of them, you could even put the computer in the front of them, and they will take that thing apart, put it back together, fix it. This is the future. And there's some people in here I wanted to talk to by saying this. Every student that's in school today, would you please stand on your feet? I see a representation all across this room. Let's give them a hand. Come on, adults, we can do better than that. I believe the children are the future. Teach them well and they will lead the way. We are depending on you. Those of you who are standing, we're depending on you to take us further. We're depending on you to teach us what we don't know. We're depending on you to be the future inventors of anything as it relates to computers and technology. The sky is the limit. You can be all that you want to be and what you ever imagine you can be. God bless you, and we wish you all the best in your endeavors. Thank you so much for attending this summit. That was all right? That was in order? Man, let me hear you say that was in order. All right, y'all don't have to be, I know we're in a summit, but you don't have to freeze up. Let's relax, loosen yourself a little bit, and perhaps you'll be inclined, as you're more relaxed, to perceive and receive all that we will get on today. I want to acknowledge the presence of the Member of Parliament in the area of Golden Gates, in the person of the Honorable Michael Folks, who have just joined us from New Providence. Coming to speak to us at this time and is going to talk about shaping policies as it relates to tax incentives and concessions here in the Bahamas. And I guess this would include both internationally and nationally. I want you to welcome at this time the President of the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce in the person of Mr. Edison Sumner. Let's give him a hand as he comes.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's always a good advantage being the first speaker in the morning. I get to take up someone else's time, and I get to throw the entire schedule off whack for the rest of the day. But I won't do that today because I understand the importance of sticking to timelines. First, I want to just thank you all for inviting me here today to be part of this summit. This is very impressive. I wasn't sure what to expect. I got invited, Minister invited me to come and speak. And thank you for, where is he? Oh, there he is. Thank you very much for the invitation, sir, to come and speak today. And honestly, I wasn't sure what to expect. So I came thinking, it's okay, great, thank you. Fantastic. I came thinking that I may speak to maybe 100 people. And driving over, I asked the gentleman who accompanied me this morning, I said, well, how many folks were there? He said, we have about a couple hundred. But I didn't think a couple hundred looked like this, right? This is more than just a couple hundred people. So I think this is a fantastic thing. I want to spend a few minutes, though, talking about taxation, incentives, and looking at some other areas that I want to touch on briefly this morning. So I think it is safe for me to say that Grand Bahama is fastly or rapidly developing as the technology capital for the country. You all should clap on that one, this Grand Bahama, right? But if we're going to move technology forward, if we're going to advance the whole concept of ICT in the country, information technology, communications, etc., science, technology, and innovation, and some other areas that we're looking at, then there's some things that must be put in place to make that a reality. It cannot happen by simple happenstance or wishful thinking. There has to be some serious collaboration, private-public partnerships and dialogue to ensure that the outcomes that we're seeking to achieve are actually first of all, that they are achievable, that they're implementable, right? And that we can measure the results of what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So, you see on the screen, I'm going to flip through a few slides back and forth, and I'm glad I'm able to control this so I can just bring you back to where I want you to be for a few moments. But the first slide I want to talk about And you asked me maybe how would stuff to do with taxation and incentives and the rest of it. And I tell this story often. Is that me? I don't think that's me, but if it is, okay. So I tell the story often. I was in Panama a few years ago, attending a meeting over there, which was the America's Business Dialogue, all right? Or it's a gathering of regional leaders in the private sector and also government officials to talk about advances in the Caribbean and Latin America as it relates to private sector and public sector engagement. When I was there the last time, I've been there a few times to attend these kinds of meetings. When I was there for that particular meeting, there were a lot of what we call high net worth individuals who were present at that time. And they had people who attended those meetings. Barack Obama was there, the President of the United States. He came, he spoke. Carlos Slim, who at the time was the world's richest man, he was there. Mark Zuckerberg, you know him from Facebook, he was there. So I had the occasion at the time to speak with a number of Latin business persons. And I had a few questions for them, because I was interested in finding out why was it that we weren't seeing more of the Latin businesses establishing presence in the Bahamas, whatever the industry is. And they gave me several reasons why they could not or did not consider investing in the Bahamas. And one of those reasons that they expressed to me was this: energy. That the cost of energy in the Bahamas was prohibitive to the degree that they could not establish a presence in the country because what they would have paid for energy consumption would have chewed up a lot of their reserves and cash, and they could not justify in their minds how they can set up a presence in the Bahamas and pay the kind of rates we pay in this country for energy. Not only paying the rates we pay for energy, but also dealing with the efficiency of it and the reliability of it. I don't know if you all have the same problem in Freeport that we have in Nassau, but you can set your clock by the time the power goes out. Right? You all have that problem here? All right, well, let me lament my problem to you. Because where I come from, it's a problem. Right? You're in the middle of the night doing something constructive, and boom, the light goes out, and no decency to call and say, we can turn your light off in 5 minutes. Right? And then the bigger problem is, you miss to not pay your bill for a couple of days, and they can turn you off again because you won't pay the bill that ran up so high, because you can't afford to pay the bill because the cost of electricity is just too high. So, for that sake, then I envy you in Freeport, right? In Nassau, it's a big problem. So, we talked about this, and one of the things that we came up with in the private sector side, from the Chamber of Commerce and also from some of the national committees that we work with, was that we have to fix our energy issues in the country generally. Now, Freeport is an exception. Outside of Freeport, the rest of us in the Bahamas are suffering when it comes to energy. And it's something that needs to be fixed and corrected very, very quickly. And we've recommended some plans to the government, and I know that they're looking at a few things and how we can get that corrected. But as far as we're concerned, if we can fix this issue in the country, we believe we can attract more businesses to come in to consider how they're going to set up shop in this country to do business, because now they're able to properly manage the cost of energy in the country. So I want to flip through all that. The next thing I want to talk about is this: tax reform. Now, when we talk about tax reform, find that there. When we talk about tax reform, I'm not talking about necessarily, we heard the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, say something about that he may have a look at corporate tax or income tax. And he's not here, so I can talk about him. And I whispered to him, said, you can look, but please don't touch. Right? I'm not sure if now is the time to talk about, correcting or implementing any new taxes. But certainly, for us to be able to attract the kind of attention we want to this country, positive attention, and for us to attract the kind of investments that we want to see coming to this country, and in particular coming into Grand Bahama as well, is that we've got to look at our tax infrastructure. What's happening with our taxation systems in the country today that will cause, one, either cause persons or businesses to come in to want to set up shop in the country, or the adverse side of it is to cause them to want to stay away. Again, because the taxation system is something that may need an additional overhaul. Now, we know that we introduced in 2015 value-added tax. VAT came in, we talked about it, was started at 15%, we settled at 7.5%. We were able to reduce significantly the number of exemptions that were being considered at the time. The system, even though there was some growing pains and there was a considerable amount of resistance to its implementation, we're satisfied that ultimately, based on the efficiency of it, that it's working efficiently, right, to the degree that the government is able to collect the taxes that is owed to it. And I believe that a lot of that efficiency is based on the fact that the private sector is directly involved in collecting the taxes on behalf of the government. But when we look at the issue of taxation in the country, we've got to consider what is it that we're doing now that is beneficial to businesses in the country. If you are a foreign direct investor and you're considering coming into the Bahamas to do business, there are several things that these people are looking for to determine whether they want to come into this jurisdiction to conduct business. But the thing is this: we are not living in an age of isolation. The Bahamas is not the only country in the Caribbean. We're certainly not the only country in the Caribbean that offers sun, sand, and sea. We're not the only country in the Caribbean who's offering technology innovation. We're not the only country in the Caribbean, or Latin America for that matter, who are boasting that we have a burgeoning economy or industry, where people can come in and they can begin to develop industries, etc. As a matter of fact, there are other countries in this region who are much smaller than we are, but they have done a lot more than we have done to date. Particularly in our innovation sector. We talk about science, technology, innovation, communications, etc., telecoms, and the rest of it. Countries like the Cayman Islands, for example. I had the president of the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce down to us several weeks ago. And we asked him to give a presentation on what's been happening in the Caymans. Why is it that the Cayman Islands, as small as they are, smaller than the population of New Providence, for example, and certainly the land masses is as small or smaller. What is it that you guys are doing over there that causes you to be leapfrogging on these issues as it relates to ease of doing business, technology, and just getting people to come in, attracting foreign direct investors into a little country? Well, the answer is pretty simple. When I look at it, for example, this way. Anyone knows what the GDP of the Bahamas is to date? Can anybody tell me? Just shoot it out, just call it out. How much? How much? Give me a percentage. What is the percentage of GDP in the country today? Well, let me ask you this way. What is the percent of debt to GDP? All right, 75, 65. All right, let's just settle at 70%. Our debt to GDP in the Bahamas is around 70%. 70. Do you know what the debt to GDP is in the Cayman Islands? Can anybody guess? Said 40%. The debt to GDP in the Cayman Islands is 17%. 17. They are smaller than we are. They've got fewer people than we've got. But they're doing things to attract the kind of attention that they need to attract to get their economies flowing and get their juices flowing, so to speak. So while we are here in the Bahamas having a lot of these wonderful conversations about how we want to move our country, how we want to grow our economies, how we want to grow industries, the Cayman Islands are standing out in front of the world with a flag saying, here we are, come do business with us, we're ready to do business with you. And it's working. It is working because large companies are going to the Cayman Islands in droves, setting up establishments in the Cayman Islands, and not just financial services firms. Cayman Islands, as you know, is popular for captive insurance industries, financial services companies, other insurance type services. But now the Cayman Islands are promoting themselves as a technology hub. The Cayman Islands do not have the kind of technology infrastructure that we've got in the Bahamas. They don't have the same kind of footprint that we've got. When you talk about having fiber connectivity running in the ground, we'll talk about that in a second. They still have their internet facilities are slower than ours. Right? It is not as reliable as our internet services are here in the country. But they are saying to the world that we have fantastic technology. We can get you online quickly. We can set up your companies to do business in this country within a matter of days, not months. And the people in the world who pay attention to the kind of thing are going there to get business done. We see the same thing happening in Bermuda. Nike, who's probably one of the world's most recognized brands, operates some of their headquarters out of Bermuda, but they don't have a presence there. They don't have, there's no big factory in Bermuda. Right? You're not going to find a big 5,000 staff complement sitting in Bermuda, but Nike is registered in Bermuda. Because Bermuda is promoting themselves as that kind of a country that attracts that kind of a business. Now, adversely in the Bahamas, we've had, particularly in the financial services sector, we've seen a flight of companies leaving the country because they're finding that doing business in this country has become onerous. We talk about the ease of doing business, and we have been talking about the ease of doing business for a long time. But every time we talk about the ease of doing business, we drop on the index of doing business in the World Economic Forum. I'm very pleased, and we're happy to see that, at least in the last report that they put out a week and a half ago, that we moved up 2 steps. So we are no longer 121, we're back to 119, which is where we were prior to the fall 2 steps that they had a couple of reports ago. But if we want to attract businesses coming into this country, then there are some things that we're going to have to do. Some of it may be a bit painful. Some of it may be a bit surgical, but it is all necessary. We cannot live in isolation. If we are going to be attracting multi-billion-dollar corporations, they're going to come with their demands. They're coming with their wish list of things that they would like to see. If I'm bringing my capital into your country, into Grand Bahama, into Freeport, and I'm saying to you, I'm prepared to spend X billions of dollars, then if I were that investor, I would expect you to roll out a certain kind of a red carpet for me. The problem with that, though, for Bahamians, is that we have become, and I say we because I'm talking to all of us, we have become so myopic in our view of foreign direct investors. We have essentially, in our minds, shut them out. We have said to ourselves over many decades, generations perhaps, that the Bahamas is for Bahamians, which is true. But Bahamians did not build this country by themselves. Bahamians didn't have the level of capital to build this country with the resources that we had available to us. Now, I'm not saying that we didn't do anything. I'm saying that we couldn't do it by ourselves. And the fact is that if we are going to be attracting investors into the country, then there are some things we've got to consider doing. And I'm going to try and get to my immigration reform slide in a second. But we have to be open to attracting businesses to come in, attracting investors to come into the country. But when they come, what is it that we're prepared to give up or concede or to offer in concessions or incentives to allow these companies to come in, spend their money, build structures, put infrastructure in the ground for us, hire a lot of people, train people in the process of doing so, promote people up to high levels of executive management in these companies, offer partnerships, equity partnerships in these arrangements, because it is my view, it's only my view, that when we invite and attract foreign direct investors into the country, especially in certain industries, I would like to see those kinds of arrangements where a partnership is extended an opportunity is extended to Bahamian businesses to partner with foreign entities so that we can ensure that we don't have a rate of corporate attrition, where when large companies leave the jurisdiction, all the intellectual property goes with them, and there's no one left in place to grow that industry or to grow that company. And that if we have people in place in partnerships with these foreign direct investors, at least we know that there's some level of naval string that's left in the ground for us to be able to take into consideration. You all still with me? All right. So, on the issue of ICT then, information technology, ICT. Today in the country, we boast in the Bahamas of having a twin pillar of the economy. Accounts for nearly 50% of the GDP of the country. Most of the persons who are employed in the country are employed in the tourism-related field, right, or allied services. The rest of them were employed in the financial services industry, and financial services being very broad scope, banks, insurance companies, brokerage facilities, offshore facilities, capital markets type facilities. So financial services was very and is very broadly defined. But it's my view that we now need to consider establishing the third leg on this stool. And my view is that the third leg on the stool has to be in the area of ICT. It has to be in the area of developing our telecommunications systems, our technology infrastructure, information systems, looking at our innovation systems, and just generally looking at this what we call STEM, science, engineering, math, technology, or what we now even narrow down further to STIs, science, technology, and innovation. And for us to be able to grow this industry, then the last part of that, the I, the innovation, has to be something that we must take very, very seriously. Because without innovation, then there's no creativity in finding ways to grow this sector. Today we have in the country two major players in the ICT space. And I say major players meaning, well, three essentially, meaning these are the big boys, right? You've got the BTC on the one hand, you've got Cable Bahamas, you've got now Alive. I see my friend Damien sitting in the audience. So these three giants of the industry are there, and they're doing what they need to do to support their customers. Right? BTC's been around for a very long time. Cable Bahamas has been around for the last 20-odd years or so. Alive, the new kid on the block, but they're growing very rapidly. But there are also quite a number of smaller companies in the country. We call them ISPs. Internet service providers, who are providing services on a much smaller scale to smaller clientele, whether it's dealing with you directly as an individual or dealing with their corporate clients, etc. The infrastructure in the country, Grand Bahama, as far as I am aware, and looking at the research that I've done, Grand Bahama, Freeport in particular, has perhaps the best technology footprint you can find anywhere in the Western Hemisphere. Right? Meaning that the world can look at the infrastructure that is in Freeport, and they can mirror that and place that in other parts of the world, in the Caribbean and Latin America in particular, and they can make themselves a ton of money doing it. The challenge that I have, not only with Freeport, with Nassau, which are the two main islands where this infrastructure is in place, is I don't think we are capitalizing on this enough. I don't think we're promoting enough that we have this level of technology infrastructure in the country today. Like I said, the Cayman Islands are out front of the world waving a flag, saying that we are here, come and do business with us. We are the Cayman Islands, we've got infrastructure in place. It's a wonderful infrastructure, blah, 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 we're doing well. But what are we doing in the Bahamas to raise that same level of awareness? Does the world know that Freeport has some of the best infrastructure that they can find anywhere in the Western Hemisphere? I don't think the world knows that. Does the world know that many of the islands in the country are already connected via fiber optic connectivity and that it's expanding as we speak? I don't think the world is quite aware of that. So maybe the time has come for us as a country and for Freeport to lead the way to step in front of the Caymans, wave a bigger flag, and say, we are here now, come and do business with us. Because if you do not do it, one of the things we found when we looked at the ease of doing business in the country, and there's a national committee that's been established. The chamber has a committee within the chamber that's looking at ease of doing business as well. One of the things that we figured out when it comes to the movements on that index, it wasn't so much, and this was a bit of a controversial opinion, but it wasn't so much that the Bahamas was declining necessarily, right? It wasn't that we were doing things that kept putting us further and further and further down on this list. Because at one point, we were up in the top 50 percentile. We were actually at the top of the food chain when it came to the ease of doing business. Now, out of the countries that have been assessed, we are at the bottom of the pile, literally. So we determined that it wasn't necessarily because the Bahamas was doing things so poorly, but it's because one of the biggest problems that we found in the Bahamas is this. Not that we are doing things poorly. One of our challenges is that we are too complacent. The Bahamas is a complacent state. We think, and I say we because I'm in this as well, and I'm part of my responsibility from the private sector side is to raise these awareness issues. We think that everyone else is supposed to do for us. We sit back, we relax, and we say, you come and fix it. You get it done. I am hungry, you come and feed me. I am thirsty, you go get me some water. And I said, no, collectively, and excuse my language, Rev, but get off your backside and do it for yourself. Because it's time for us to move in that direction. So what we determined then was that on the ease of doing business issue in the country, it wasn't that we were doing so poorly, it was that we weren't doing anything. And because we weren't doing anything, other countries like Jamaica, you all remember Jamaica? You all remember these little countries like St. Lucia, right? St. Kitts? Some of these countries, some people in the world probably never even heard about. While we were sitting back waiting for everyone else to do for us, they got on the ground and they started working and working and working, and they were doing for themselves. And now, the Bahamas and Jamaica have flipped positions on the Ease of Doing Business Index. Where Jamaica once was is where we are now. And where we were is where Jamaica now is. And that didn't happen by Jamaicans sitting down and saying, wait for them to come and bring the meal to me. They went and they cooked their own food. Literally. Right? Whenever I go to Jamaica, I stay particularly at this hotel in Kingston. And one of the things that they delight in telling us when we have breakfast is that the fruit you're eating was grown in our backyard. The juice you're drinking was just done in our kitchen in the back, and the juice was juiced out of fruits that were grown in the backyard of the Pegasus Hotel in Kingston, Jamaica. When we come here, we go looking for the imported mango. We look for the kiwi and other things. I'm like, man, can I get to a hotel where I can find some juju? Or some dilly? Or some mango that came in from Eleuthera? Right? or pineapples that were grown in this country. And this is, again, we have such a dependence on everyone else doing for us that we are failing to do for ourselves. And that is why when I said I was impressed coming in, it was not only with the numbers, but I'm impressed that we actually got to a point to host the Grand Bahama Technology Summit, that coming out of the summit now, it shows that we are now prepared to roll up our sleeves and get some work done for ourselves. So in the area of ICT, there were some recommendations that we made recently. And I just want to run through just a few of them very quickly, and then we're going to talk about some incentives in a second. How much time do I have? A few minutes, okay. So, a couple of recommendations we made. One, and this is some of the stuff we shared with the cabinet recently as well. So one thing is we said there needs to be a dedicated ministry or department of ICT where you have a minister who is responsible for the growth of the ICT sector, not IRCA. IRCA is a regulator. They're not a promoter. And by the way, and since I got the government sitting in front of me, I would like to see the government release themselves from a lot of these holdings that they've got. It's a challenge for me when the government sits as the regulator, the licensor, the operator, the customer service representative, and all these other things rolled up into one. I think that it may be more beneficial for us, ministers, if we were to allow the private sector, through partnership with the government, to run some of these industries and run some of these companies and these corporations, and let the government be the ones to crack the whip on us when we're doing wrong. But if the government is in business and the government does something that is untoward, who's going to be the crack the whip on the government? The government. The government will regulate itself. But we need the government to regulate us in the private sector to be sure that we stay on point and that we operate our business ethically and with integrity. Then we'd like to see an internet exchange point established in Freeport. Establish it in Freeport. I think Freeport has the technology, has the infrastructure for that to happen. Right? And that means if you were to do that, and I see on the agenda someone is speaking from Google, if you do that, I believe that we will be able to attract some of those large logistics companies, the large technology companies, and some of the other companies to come into the country to actually establish a presence, because now they can get their internet origination and set up their facilities in the Bahamas and not have to rely necessarily on what's happening in the United States or Canada. It's an idea that is worth exploring and that we can, I think, develop. Next, I think we need to establish, as a country, a science, technology, and innovations hub for the region, meaning that we can become the place where everyone else comes to get business done. No matter where you're from. If you're saying we want to go down to the Caribbean to do business, we want to go in Latin America to do business, then Freeport should be the first thing they're talking about, because we have logistics, some of the best logistics, in fact, in the world. We've got location, being so close to the mainland of the United States and to the Americas. We've got infrastructure already in the ground. Why aren't we even on top of this yet? Because of complacency. We should be on the top of the food chain, and this is no joke. Freeport should be so far ahead with what we have already that the Cayman Islands should be coming to us looking for capacity. The United States, when looking to expand the operations from some of these big firms, should be coming to Freeport to say, Freeport, I want to set up there because of what you have already in the ground. Amazon. You all know Amazon. Big e-commerce giant, are seeking to move their another headquarters, and they've been looking now for the past couple of years as to where they're going to park their next headquarters for their company. They have a plan that in the next 3 to 5 years, they want to establish this new headquarters somewhere in the world. They committed to spend over $50 billion to establish a new presence, employ over 5,000 people. So the question I put was, why did the Bahamas not put itself on the list for consideration? Someone said we did. I didn't hear anything about it. Not just now, but I heard this when I mentioned this a week or two ago. that even if we weren't sure if we had a chance, if we didn't even apply or even raised it as a point of interest, then we've already lost that battle. Now, I made this, and I mentioned this to the Deputy Prime Minister, and I'm hoping that he will consider it with his colleagues, that even though they're saying that they have another 3 years or so, I think that they're intending to make up their minds very soon about where they're going to put their next HQ. A part of what we are recommending in this is to establish the Bahamas as a hub for headquarters for international conglomerates. So that when you look at the likes of the Googles and the Amazons and all the other major companies, rather than going down to the Cayman Islands because they have more advantageous tax rules and their ease of doing business is a lot better, and they are welcoming international companies, rather than going down to Bermuda where they're doing the same thing, whether they're going to run over to Singapore or going down to the Seychelles Islands or wherever else they're going, I would like to see the Bahamas position itself to say, we are the international headquarters internationally, right? So that anyone who wants to consider expanding their operations anywhere in the world, that the Bahamas is going to be on top of their consideration to get this done. We want to see smart cities established. Nassau has been identified as a smart city by the International Telecommunications Union and also the CTU, and they're working now towards establishing Nassau as this first smart city in the world. Freeport can have that same advantage. Be considered a smart city, right? And a smart city means things like having interconnectivity, Wi-Fi everywhere, broadband everywhere, being able to get online anywhere, anytime, right? Being able to do things with certain apps, and I saw Donovan was on the program earlier, doing things with certain apps, etc., to be sure that you always have a connection to the world. And that's, the smart cities. It's a reality, it's happening. Nassau is preparing for it. I think that we, Ian, you should make an appeal. Tell them you want to get Freeport next on your list. Yesterday I was dealing with another major issue. I couldn't get you, Almost caused me couldn't come this morning. But I'm sure I'll see a copy. We've talked about this, right? Also, we want to, and again, for the ease of doing business, when we come to ICT, we want to see things like a single window established for business interface with government, implement a plan to expand broadband coverage and fiber connectivity throughout the country, promote blockchain. I saw something on the program of blockchain. Anybody knows about blockchain? Financial technology? Listen, here's the other thing I want to talk about, and this is why the Cayman Islands, I said, are doing so well. Barbados, whose dollar is not even worth $1 anymore, because the Bahamas is still operating at parity, right? Yes? We still say, or at least think, our dollar is worth $1. Barbados' dollar is not worth $1 in U.S. terms. But Barbados has already jumped out to the front of the curb with the Caribbean, and they are promoting blockchain as their next currency. They are doing it. They're not talking about it. It's being done. Most of the people in this room don't even know what blockchain is. Most of us don't even know what financial technology is. Yesterday. How much y'all know about blockchain? All right. Forgive me for not being here yesterday. But I'm glad, I saw it on the agenda, I'm glad that it actually came up in discussion, because that is the future of financial services in the world, not only in this country. Right? The governor of the Bank of England is now touting blockchain as the next wave of financial literacy in the UK. Barbados has already implemented it. They are doing it now. The Cayman Islands have already started it. They've implemented it. I don't want to see us come back to this summit next year, if we're going to have it again next year, and have the same discussion again because we have not advanced on our own blockchain technology. And by the way, we might not have a choice, Because at the rate the banks are moving in this country, we're going to need some other solution very soon. All right? That's as far as I'll go with that. Before they start calling me, because, they're all members of the chamber. We would like to promote the country. When my time is up, please just cue me. Okay. We would like to promote the jurisdiction as a cybersecurity hub as well. See, my friend there, Dr. John Bain, I spoke about this recently as well, and we're going to be engaging soon to put together an ICT subcommittee to assist in advising the national committees and the government on some of these ICT initiatives. But cybersecurity has grown to be a significant issue in the country, in the world, in fact, and I think we need to spend some time developing this island, this city, as the cybersecurity hub and attracting those businesses in the country who are able to use that facility here. And I already mentioned the last point, divesting the government of BTC and other companies as a matter of urgent priority. Some of my friends may not like hearing that, but that's my position. Also, I think as to incentivize ourselves and to put measures in place, we ought to now start training ICT curriculum in the high school level. There's a plan that we have in place for that we're going to be releasing and talking about very, very soon. And as I said this before, and I want to reiterate this point, attracting ICT conventions, annual general meetings, corporate retreats, and other type of activities and events into this country, on this island, as a means for us to continue to build up the economy, looking at facilitating a new industry where we can actually generate some significant returns. I can tell you, I know of companies who take their corporate retreats and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a weekend, perhaps millions of dollars on a weekend, giving their corporate executives a wonderful time wherever they go. All expense paid trips all over the world, spend a lot of money on the ground. This is an area that I think we can promote very easily, and it's something that can be done in very short order. I'll skip over that. Finally, my wrap-up. Okay. Let me wrap up by saying this. We talked about the regional headquarters, etc. I just want to say as I close, and I want to thank you so much for your attention this morning. We haven't touched the surface yet. We haven't scratched the surface yet of the true potential that we have as a country. I sincerely believe that. I think that we have so much potential. There are so many opportunities that we have to grow this country, to grow this island, to grow this city as the next big deal in the world. I think that people who are talking about the Bahamas internationally, yes, tell them come to enjoy the vacation. Tell them come to enjoy the sun, sand, and sea. Enjoy the friendly people. Enjoy the wonderful food. Enjoy our beautiful and fantastic culture. But tell them when they come and they bring their smartphones to tell them, yes, you can get online in the Bahamas readily. Right? When the businessman comes down, tell them, yes, we are able to keep your power on. Not in Freeport, in another part of the country. Tell them that we have people who we are training, who have skills, who can work in their companies to do the work that you need them to do. So that while we're going to be promoting an immigration policy, yes, while we're going to say, let's relax some of the immigration policies on bringing in expatriate workers, foreign workers, while we're going to set up these specialty vehicles to get people to come in to work and to take up residency and the rest of it, set up companies, hopefully in partnership with other people, say that your need to bring in all these other people may not even exist because we've got the trained people in the Bahamas to do it, right? And that's going to come through training, skills development, productivity. The Bahamas will be now establishing a productivities council that should be, legislation should be put in place very shortly to take to the government for their review. But it has to be a case where we can promote ourselves as the next Mecca and not just be selling sun, sand, and sea. Everybody got sun, sand, and sea. Iceland got sun, sand, and sea. But who going to Iceland on a summer vacation? Few people, all right? So I would like to suggest, as I take my seat, thank you very much, Reverend Mark Alpine. I'll give you my clicker so that I know I'm stopping. I want to encourage us, please, let's put together ourselves in a public-private kind of a partnership. I do not expect the government to do this on their own. I do not expect the private sector to do it on their own. But if we can get the level of collaboration between the government, private sector, academia, civil society, and others, there's nothing that we cannot do if we put ourselves together and make this a goal, an objective of our country to become the #1 leader in ICT, innovation, science, technology, etc. over the next 5 years. Because 5 years is like a generation in technology terms. When you leave this room, an app that you didn't have before, when you walk out, it already exists. Several of them. So a year from now is like an eternity. So we don't have any time to waste. Time is not on our side, but I believe we can get this done. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sumner. I was very much enlightened by his presentation. I think it was very valuable to us. I keep hearing this on a consistent basis, that Grand Bahama has the infrastructure, Grand Bahama is capable, and I'm hearing the president of the chamber telling us in a nutshell, we need to move beyond sand, sun, and sea, and hotel, and think bigger than just hotel and tourism. And so we have been enlightened. And that's one of those conversations where you say something that make you go, things that make you go, I can't hear you. Things that make you go. We want to acknowledge the presence of the Member of Parliament for Fort Charlotte, the Honorable Mark Humes, who just walked in. Also, Mr. Henry St. George from the Grand Bahama Port Authority. I don't know, but if I was in a church center, I would say, so I want to get this in your head. Look at your neighbor. I don't mean to take you to church, and we ain't going to church, but, let's do a little churchy thing. Take your neighbor by the hand. Say, neighbor, in Freeport, we need to get up and get going. Matter of fact, we need to just do it, as Nike said. Based on what I heard Mr. Summers say, we just need to do it. And based on what was being said yesterday, we need to get up and get going. Now, Mr. Sumner, two things. I want to inform this audience that the government of the Bahamas is bringing forth a bill called the Commercial Enterprise Bill, which is going to be able to deal with many of the initiatives of bringing in other major companies to have the opportunity to work and to do stuff here in the Bahamas. And even more so, because our colleagues in Nassau tend to think, and I often say to them, Nassau is not the Bahamas, and the Bahamas is not just Nassau. So we need to lobby to have some of these companies coming into Grand Bahama. And then, Mr. Sumner, you said, excuse me, Rev, but we need to get up off our backside. I'm a King James Version fella, and I would not have said backside. I would have said, get up off of your astronomical anatomy, praise the Lord. Moving right along, we have a since we're in that technology, as he reminded us about information communication technology, this is an appropriate time for us to continue in that area as we're going to hear about bridging the digital divide. I want to welcome a Bahamian descent, Christy Powells from Google. How are you? Now, Christy, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this.
I know.
Look at this. Christy, I want to say thank you. And we want to say, welcome home. Now, I wasn't here yesterday because I was doing some government business yesterday.
You missed out.
And so I wasn't here. But I came in yesterday evening, and my wife, who represented me yesterday, the first thing she did was spoke to me about you. How impressed she was with you. So I look forward to this presentation. Come a little closer. I know I'm a stranger to you, but I just wanted to say, if no one haven't told you yet, the fact that you're of Bahamian descent, the fact that they stood up for you, we just want to let you know we're proud of you.
Thank you. All right, so if I wasn't nervous before, I'm still not nervous. Good morning, Grand Bahama. I am Christy Powell. Thank you to Senator Thompson for this amazing opportunity to be a part of the change. As I mentioned yesterday, I started my career as an associate at Goldman Sachs in the engineering division. And one of the products that I'm really, really passionate and proud about that they still use at the firm even after my tenure with them was it was really our responsibility to figure out how do we tell the differences between HP and Dell? How do we know if we're going to move from a distribution of Linux from version 5 to version 6? And we ran a bunch of regression test analysis before the firm actually made a decision on which platform they were going to go with. And I'm proud to say that I've traveled the world talking to people about that product, and they still use it from coast to coast and country to country. I took a sabbatical, and now I'm at Google as a senior technical account manager, and I confessed to all of you yesterday that I troll you, so I'm the person behind all of those ads that you see. And I've been at the firm now for 3 years. So what I want to talk to you a little bit about today is bridging the digital divide. And at Google, we're 100% passionate about this, and it's also something that's very passionate and near and dear to me because as a small business, you know, I recognize the limitations that you guys have, and you kind of have to just settle for what you can get in the Bahamas, even though it may not be world class. But having worked at very large institutions in the world, obviously we employ very, very smart people, and we have a lot of really talented engineers, and so we could just sit down and think through problems. What people, and you know, when you think of Goldman Sachs, people often think it's a bank. I mean, well, it is an investment bank, right? But you probably think that the largest arm of the company was investment banking and sales, but it was actually the engineering department. And we employed 10,000 people out of the 30,000, and the other 20,000 were just spread across the business units. So that gives you an understanding of just how important technology was to the investment bank and how important technology was to that industry. Now, obviously, fast forward 7 years, and here I am working at Google, the #1 tech company in the world. So absolutely. Absolutely, living the life of an expat can be very exciting. The experiences and challenges of living abroad change you. You develop as a person, learn new skills, enhance capabilities, and create new meanings in life. It allows you to gain an appreciation for global differences and gain perspective on new opportunities for the Bahamas. Some can argue that we failed to keep up with technology advancement, but where others see failure, I genuinely see an opportunity. The technology revolution has yet to reach and integrate with all of the businesses, households, and the lifestyle of Bahamians. This deficiency has created an alignment where we as a nation can seize this opportune moment to take the lessons learned from other countries and ensure that it is better in the Bahamas. Today, I'll take you on a journey to explore the Bahamas' prospects for bridging the digital divide. The divide refers to existing economic and social inequalities that impact our access and ability to leverage modern information and technology. Social inequalities result from an uneven distribution of wealth, where a person's social class determines whether or not they have access to the world's information. The economies of scale allows large companies to employ and retain top talent to expand their technology capabilities, while small to medium-sized business owners may recognize their inefficiencies but lack the means to implement change. Often the solution to technology challenges lie in broad and expansive thinking. You're cruising along, and then technology evolves, requiring you to quickly adapt. When change is recognized as an opportunity, we stretch, we grow, and we potentially create something that the world can't live without. Steve Jobs, founder of Apple, gave the world a computer inside the home. How many of you have a computer inside your home right now? You can't live without it. Mark Zuckerberg gave us Facebook, a medium to stay connected. How many of you are on Facebook right now? Jeff Bezos gave the world its first online megastore with Amazon. How many of you shopped online last night? My question to you, though, Grand Bahama, that I ask is, what will Grand Bahama give us? We've spoken and I've heard about the tech companies that you want to bring here. But I ask you, what about the tech companies that are going to start here? Here in the Bahamas, we have industries with challenges. But when we apply creative solutions, we can move the needle forward through innovation. Albert Einstein said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we used to create them." Which means that we must put on our thinking caps and never take them off. And I believe that it truly starts with this tech summit. Let's take a closer look at 3 industries where we can compete globally by leveraging today's technology to transform the way we do business and conquer the digital divide. We'll explore education, finance, and public service. Trinika Roll, I met her randomly at the National Society for Black Engineers conference last year. I was walking around in my Google t-shirt, and I saw a Bahamian student with the flag on their back. And I'm like, whoa, Bahamas? Can't, no way, who are you here with? I immediately connected with her, and I was so pleased to find out that she's leading a NSBE Junior program and also leads a camp called Beta in the summer right here in Freeport. How amazing is that? Trinika and her team have all engineering backgrounds. They've all studied abroad, and what have they done? They've returned home. They're looking for an opportunity to make a difference, and they understand that it starts with education, but they understand that it starts with you. Finance. I don't recall, but I believe it was Kimberly who spoke about yesterday about having a microfinancing platform that they started in Haiti. How many of you in here want to be an entrepreneur? How many of you in here have money to be an entrepreneur? Wow, look at that. I'll share a story with you. I called a local bank a couple months ago, and I said, hey, I'm looking to start a business. I want some money. They said, how much do you need? I said, 100,000. They asked me how much money I make. I told them. I never heard from them again. I called a month later. I said, hey, I want to buy a car. How much money do you need? 100,000. How much money do you make? I told them. They called back. That's a problem. That's a challenge. How do we fix it? Microfinancing. All across the world, microfinancing platforms allow businesses, regular consumers, people just like you and me, to donate $5 to someone else who may want to start a cotton picking farm, whatever it is that they want. So the idea is, if I donate $5, Senator Thompson donates $5, and we get 100 people to donate $5. 5 times 100, 500. That person who couldn't get a loan from the bank because they don't have any credit now has $500 that they could go and start their business. Third industry, public service. How many of you, maybe 2 years ago, had someone knock on your door and say, excuse me, can you tell me your first name, your last name, how many people live in this house, how much money you make, what gender are you? Oh, it happens, right? And the person came in, you invited them in, you sat down, you gave them a piece of coffee or maybe a cake, and they took that information on a pencil with a piece of paper. And you're looking at them going, really? A pen, paper? And now you have to go back and manually enter that data into some Excel spreadsheet in a government office? Let's think about that for a second. No, we don't have to think about that at all, actually. We know what's wrong with that picture. So let's think about that. Fast forward 2 months from now. Someone is in your house digitally collecting that information. But not only are they digitally collecting that information, it's being automatically persisted to a database. There's some smart person who's writing some programming language in R and running statistics and regression analysis against it immediately. We're constantly worried about government layoffs. But the truth is, yes, I've now put that person out of a job who may have been note-taking or who may have been entering in data, but guess what? They're now doing something a little bit different, and they're growing and learning at the same time. The digital divide is the space between people with computers and those without. It's the space between using technology and turning a blind eye towards it. The divide is real, and we must take steps to close it, both nationally and internationally. I've shared those examples with you to prove that we can get there, Bahamas, but how, you ask? For those of you that already have businesses at Google, we have some tools, and I'll go through those right now, if I could figure out how to use this clicker, because trust me, I haven't used one in a long time. All right. Google's mission was to organize all of the world's information. There were two guys huddled in a basement, and they were in school. And a part of that challenge and frustration was they wanted access to textbooks that they didn't have access to, and they hated going to the library and waiting to get it. So what they actually started off with was an idea that they could get all of that data and make it available to all of the students. At the time, I don't know how many of you, well, most of us in here are probably old enough to remember Netscape. There were probably only about 8 to 15 web pages on the world, on the internet at that time, and so they also indexed those pages. Now here it was, two guys who had a dream, and like Xerxes, they took nothing and they made it into something, being magicians. Now, fast forward 18 years later, we're a full-grown company, 75,000 people all across the world, and we're now making the internet free. Google's diversity strategy. How many of you use Google search? Every hand should go up. All right. How many of you speak another language? Awesome. I don't, but good for you. You would appreciate, though, that if you do speak another language and you were trying to go to a web page, that we do have an option called Google Translate. Now imagine if Google only had people working for them who only spoke English. Do you think that would have happened? Probably not. Diversity in our tools, diversity in our backgrounds, diversity in our socioeconomic classes forces people at Google to think differently and creatively about products, which means that we create the best products all the time. My point to you is, though, especially to the students, just because you may have come from a different background than somebody else doesn't mean you don't deserve a seat at that table. We, at Google, and a part of why it is that I'm here today and why I was so proud when Senator Thompson reached out, and I don't see Raquel in the room anymore, but wherever she is, we have an initiative at Google called Bridging the Digital Divide, which is what I'm talking to you about today. And what we're really trying to do with our mission is bring our tools into the forefront so that people understand that they can compete on the same playing field as the New York Times or the Atlantis Hotel or the Nikes and the Adidas of the world. Because we have these tools and they're actually free, but underrepresented areas as well as minority-owned businesses and nonprofits don't necessarily have access to a Googler that they can say, hey, can you help me one-on-one? And so that's kind of what I'm doing today. So hopefully you could use some of this information right away. Today's agenda, talking about your online presence. We're going to go through Google My Business. I'm going to share with you some of my pet peeves. We're going to talk about Google AdWords. And then lastly, we're going to cover G Suite. Your online presence. How many of you own a business? How many of you have a website? All right. How many of you, out of the numbers who raised their hand who have a website, how many of you know if whether or not your website is mobile responsive? Less hands go up. Interesting. A couple of years ago, Google decided that we were going to focus on being a mobile-first company. And what that meant is when I visit a web page and I'm checking from it on my cell phone, and I can't really read it because I have to scroll to the left, scroll to the right, scroll up and down, the challenge with that is you have a higher bounce rate because I'm going to leave your page because you're not mobile responsive. Does that make sense? So it's about making sure that your web page can be seen on a desktop, can be seen on tablet, and it can also be seen on any device. You have to be a part of that conversation, and we don't want you to be left out. So 80% of our consumers are searching on desktop, which means that they're probably sitting at work when they should be working, probably searching on Google, but we'll hope they're doing it for education. But what those numbers show us is that 80% of consumers are using it on their mobile devices, and 84% are searching on tablets. What does that data say to me? When I was booking my ticket to come to get to Nassau earlier this week, I did it on my train, on my subway going into work. Think about that for a second. I didn't go home. I wasn't in my house on my desktop. I was on my phone on the JetBlue app booking my flight and paying with my credit card. If 84% of your consumers are searching on tablets, again, it means that you have to be a part of the conversation. If you are not where they are, then you're missing out. Know your people, know your audience. We're going to talk a little bit more about this during the analytics section. But consumers want to know if you're open 9 to 5, if you're open 10 to 6. They want to know, how do I get somewhere? They want to know directions. They want to know a street address. I'll share with you a pet peeve. 2 years ago, I live in Nassau East. A Domino's just opened up right outside my corner. Literally, if I wanted to, I could walk there. I was in my bedroom. I had my smartphone. I had my tablet, and also had my laptop. And I was trying to find Domino's number, and I couldn't find it, right? How many of you have been in New York, been in Miami, and you wanted to find a Pizza Hut or a McDonald's or a Macy's, and you put it in Google, and it magically came up? Every hand should go up. No hands going up? What's going on here? All right, right? So it works. So in my mind, I'm thinking now, trying to find this Domino's, do I really want to get up and walk all the way to my mother's room to get the phone book? No, needless to say, I did not have Domino's that night. So you know what happened to that Domino's? They lost a customer. They lost a customer. I didn't eat Wendy's because the line was too long. I think I just probably ate something in the house that night. But the point is, Google my business. This is what a free product, again. I gave this same talk with the Royal Bank of Canada maybe a year ago, and someone in the audience was from Domino's, and they heard it. They immediately took action. Let me tell you, the next time I went home and I searched for that Domino's number, it showed up. It was a free product. The idea here, folks, though, is if you own a business and you want to be found, again, you have to be a part of that conversation, but it's a free tool. All I'm asking you to do is register a picture, register your first name, your last name, give them a street address, give them a P.O. box, give them a phone number, a website, and if they're searching for chocolate or if they're searching for pizza, they're going to find you. And that's all a part of what it is that you need to do or that you can do right here in Grand Bahama, starting today. So everyone who has a business, I want you to go online and I want you to do it. Now, what do you think the #1 search engine is in this part of the world? Everybody shout it. Google. Exactly. So if you had to prioritize which search engine you wanted to be on, then you definitely want to make sure you're in Google. And by signing up for Google products or signing up for Google My Business specifically, you're automatically on Google Maps. You're automatically on Google AdWords, you're automatically on Google+, and you're automatically found on Google Search. So if you had to choose and you wanted to be found, you have to be a part of the conversation. And where are people talking? They're talking on Google. Google AdWords. When you search, it's because you want to know something. It's like, I want to go somewhere. I want to know what movie to watch. I want to know what shoes to buy. I want to know if there's a McDonald's nearby. And in those micro moments, you want to make sure that you show up, right? So I think I spoke to a young lady yesterday who said she sells chocolates, and I received a set of chocolates in my hotel room. Now, I would have never known that they make chocolates in Freeport, ever, unless she came up to me and said that. And I'm pretty sure if I search for chocolates in Freeport, she may or may not show up. But my point to you is, she can go ahead and sign up for Google AdWords. But you need to know, what are your goals, right? You need to understand what it is that you're putting out there, so you know whether or not people want to buy it and how to reach them. There's a schoolgirl walked up to me yesterday and said, "Miss, I have a blog." And before she said anything else, I said to her, "You want to know how to make money from it?" How many of you have a blog in here? A couple people? Okay. How many of you make money from that blog? All right. Your hand didn't go up, sir. So we'll focus on that. So you know that you want to drive more traffic to your website. You know that you may want to make money. You know that you want people to open your email every time. And these are all things that Google AdWords can help with because we're connecting advertisers to publishers. What is a publisher? A publisher is somebody who has a website. So we're saying, hey, I am the chocolatier in Freeport, and the Freeport News has space that I can advertise on, and so I want my ad to show up on the Freeport News website. Does that make sense? Kinda, sorta, maybe? All right. Before you all go running off and buying, again, AdWords, free. Before you go run off and sign up for an AdWords account, how many of you in here, local business owners, have advertised in the newspaper? All right, a few, but you guys know that you can advertise in the newspaper, right? So you go to the Guardian, you go to the Tribune, you go to any other local newspaper, and they say, hey, it's $400 for you to run an ad on a Tuesday, a Wednesday, and a Friday, right? But it's $600 if you want to run an ad on a Monday and a Thursday, because that's when the death notices come out. Okay, and then they're promising you, well, you're going to get, we print 10,000 newspapers every day. But out of those 10,000 newspapers that they print every day, how many people saw your ad? They can't ever tell you that, no matter what they say to you. They can't ever tell you that. Digitally, however, if I say to you, you advertise with me, I'll give you 50 views every day. That means every time someone visits my webpage, I promise you I'll show them your ad. That I can guarantee. That I can tell you. So regardless of what the newspaper tells you, just know that digitally is the way to go. How many of you play video games? Candy Crush. All right, all of the hands go up now. More so on the left-hand side of the room. You know that ad that you keep clicking X on so you could get back to your game? So the reason why we do ads at Google is so we could keep the internet free. So we could make sure that you continuously have access to the world's information. So we could continuously make sure that when you have to go on Google to look for your next homework assignment, that you find it. So please don't click my ad. Google Analytics. There were a couple of you in here when I asked the rhetorical question whether or not you have a web page, right? And there's a lot of buzz in the community right now about apps. So I'll take you through an example. I'll take you through an exercise. You have a website. Alive tells you, BTC tells you, 49% of the users in the Bahamas have an Android. 49% of the users have an iPhone, and 2% have something else. And I say to you, I want to go ahead and build an app. Do you go and build an app? How many people will just run out and build an app at that point? Probably don't. I know you all will at that point. But let's say you have a website, and I say to you, 70% of your users are coming from Android devices, and 30% of your users are coming from Apple. What do you do at that point? Which app do you build first? Exactly. But if you don't have the data and you're not equipped with it and you're not armed with it, you'll make a silly decision. You'll end up costing yourself a lot more money in the long run as opposed to using the data that you have in the beginning. Google Analytics helps you do that. If you drop a little code on your web page, you could start to put your customers into segments. What do I mean by segments? All of us probably attend a party or a social gathering at some point, and somebody has a website telling them about an event. Let's say the Tech Summit. Let's say 2 months from now, when's Women's Month? March? Is it March? March? All right, March is Women's Month. So in March, Senator Thompson and Raquel say, you know what? Women in Tech, that's what we're doing. And in March, we have the Grand Bahama Women in Tech Summit, and when a woman goes to that page, we want to say girl power. When a man visits that page, we want to say support our women. How do you do that? How do you know if a woman's visiting your page? How do you know if a man's visiting your page? How do you know if you got a girl who's under the age of 18, you should put that in pink, and if you got a girl who's over the age of 35, you want to put that in red? How do you know that? Google Analytics. And the only way for you to do that is to get that data, harness it, and use it. Google Analytics answers the who, the what, the how, and most of all, how do you make money? The value. Reports in Google Analytics gives you access to this data. You're able to mine it, you're able to look at it, you're able to use it. But my point to you is, first of all, you have to be using it. And if you're not using it, then you're missing out. My analogy, 100% towards websites, same goes for an app. If you're using an app and you have a page that you think a lot of people are reading, you're making a guess at that point, and that's not an educated thing to do. We want you to have a hypothesis. We want you to be able to prove that hypothesis. And at this point, if you could take a look at all of the pages and understand whether or not somebody's actually reading your content versus just hitting the page and bouncing away. Another good example of Google Analytics, when you guys go to shop on Amazon, say you put an item in your cart, you go to check out, but your kids call, so you don't actually check out, but you go to read a newspaper, and suddenly you see that exact same item, and it's like, hey, I'm here. Like, don't forget about me. Come buy my stuff. That's exactly what they're doing. They're using retargeting, and they're making sure that you never, ever forget them. Smart moves by advertisers, right? G Suite. I've spoken to lots of small business owners, and I think you would have understood yesterday, a really big pet peeve of mine are those of you that run your servers in your basements or on campus, like in your offices. And then there was a young lady who asked a question from NEMA about BCP and the business continuity plans and processes, right? Move to the cloud. I'm not 100% sure what the policies are in the Bahamas, not 100% sure what the policies are around data protection and data retention. I do know, having spent some time in Tokyo, you know, we were launching a data center at one point, and they had really, really strict laws about their data that they actually had to have it in Tokyo. And so what we did was we replicated to Hong Kong, and then we replicated to London, and then we replicated back to New York. If you don't have a strong data policy and the government is not requiring you to have your data stored locally, then why not put it in the cloud, right? Like there's no drawback from you doing that. I spoke to a school, you know, a couple days ago, and she said, I was like, how much did you spend for that server? She said $3,000. I was like, wow, how about you give me that $3,000 server, I mine some Bitcoin for you, and you pay $5 in the cloud for a server every month. And she was just like, oh, I need to fire my IT guy. And I'm like, no, that's not my message. My message was you need to educate your IT guy. You need to force him to learn and grow a little bit more. How was work done 30 years ago? You took out a pencil and a piece of paper, just like that public service person who came to your door. They wrote it down. They stuck it in an envelope. They probably put it in snail mail. It made it someplace else. Somebody like Senator Thompson came up after it, marked it up, wrote up on red ink, put a Post-it note on it. He maybe even crumpled it up and gave you some good feedback after it. How do we do work today? Using Google. I write a document, I open it up, I send Senator Thompson a link, and he and I are editing it at the same time. Think about that. Think about the power in that. I don't have to wait a week. I don't have to send him an attachment. He can edit at the same time as me, and we could have instant collaboration. That's what we want. A young lady yesterday spoke about Google in the classroom. I do not have a slide on that. But it is very important that we understand what Google in the classroom enables that teacher to do. She could now have the dialogue with her students and her parents and other teachers beyond the classroom. Learning is an inevitable process. It takes time, it takes energy, but it's continual. And she can do that using Google in the classroom. Grand Bahama, I have shared with you 10x ideas in education, finance, and public service. I've given you tools to make your businesses better. Technology has the power to have a huge impact on our lives, but it's not a silver bullet. It won't fix or solve all of our problems. There's another part of the equation that some, if not all of us here today, can play. For us to truly take advantage of these tools, we need to encourage and invest in those with the ideas. We need to provide them with two things, mentorship and sponsorship, and two groups need to be a part of that process, government and enterprise. TechCrunch conducted a recent study in New York City, one of the fastest growing technology sectors, and concluded that mentorship is a secret weapon in those who made it and those who didn't. For a new business to be among the best, you need successful people who have reached that level to help impart knowledge to avoid making similar mistakes. The relationships that are the most prosperous focused on discussing major issues plaguing the entrepreneur's company. New founders in the Bahamas should lean on their predecessors to understand the intricacies of doing business in the Bahamas. While they may understand the technology, taking that product to market is a complex problem that a mentor can help with. Governments can and do play a critical role in spurring innovation and actively creating new markets instead of just fixing them. There must be advocates in government who believe that market failure justifies some funding of infrastructure and basic science. Recently, we created the Ministry of Science, Education, and Technology. I'm eagerly waiting to see the revolutionary changes in science and technology in our country, and I would bet that it would indirectly improve all of the industries I mentioned: education, finance, and public service. With the advent of this ministry, it seems perplexing that such limited intervention and public sector dollars have flowed downstream to applied research or providing early-stage funding for companies. Some of the world's most famous innovation hubs, governments have played pivotal roles, envisioning and financing the creation of entire new fields, from information technology to smart cities. These types of public investments are critical in creating and shaping new markets. I challenge us as Bahamians to become a major innovation hub in the region. Success will depend heavily on solid collaboration and bipartisanship within and between our organizations and governments. When you think there's a better way to do something, find it. The challenge with technology isn't whether or not machines think, the problem is whether or not men do. Let's get creative, Bahamas, and change the way people think by giving them new ways to operate. Once we have an idea, it is time for us to stop being afraid of what can possibly go wrong and start being excited about what will go right. It is important for us to push the boundaries of what we know and what we feel that we can achieve. Somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known, waiting to be discovered, and waiting to impact our islands. Thank you.
Girl power. Things that make you go. We were immensely enlightened by you as well on today, Kirsty. And once again, we're proud of you, and you make us all proud to be Bahamians. Also want to say how happy we are to have Mr. Damian Blackburn. Would you please stand as we give him a hand? Thank you, one of our major sponsors. And you know, I did that because he's always given something away, and I'm about to give something away on his behalf, his company. And so let's welcome the lovely Miss Atalia Wild Goose, who's coming to the podium. They tell me she's very shy, and she doesn't like to do this kind of stuff, stand in the public, but we're happy today. We're going to give away the SA Plus, and Miss Allison is going to come and pull out the card of this person who's about to win this. While she's doing that, look at the neighbor you haven't looked at and look at them and say, neighbor, let's just get up and do it. Look at somebody else and say, we just need to get going. They're going to shake it again. There we go. These good people from Alive. It's good to be alive. And the winner is Edwin's Printing, Cornell, and Mavis Cooper. Yes. Now, I had nothing to do with this, you know. I must declare, this is a good fella from Pine Ridge. There you go. I wonder if I should say that. He said he will no longer experience drop calls. You want to bet? We're going to carry on. And right now, another Bahamian who was unable to make it. She works for NASA, and she's in Washington, where she resides. She's a Bahamian. She's doing well. But to present, we're proud of her as well. Yes. And Aisha would have been speaking about STEM boards, but to present on her behalf is Dr. Jarvis Salsa, who will be speaking to us about strengthening education for innovation. And so at this time, we're going to ask Dr. Salsa to come forward at this time. Let's give him a hand as he comes. Let's give him a Grand Bahama welcome.
Showtime.
Dr. Jarvis.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Again, my name is Jarvis Salser, and I'm the Director of Education for STEM Board. And STEM Board is the company that's Aisha Bo is the co-founder and CEO of. And today I'm going to be speaking about strengthening education for innovation. Before I get started, I actually want to share a personal story, my own kind of journey, because I have a special place in my heart for the Bahamas. And when you see my slide, you know why. When I share my story, you know why. Why Bahamas, even though I'm from Louisiana, from the South, but I have a special place in my heart for the Bahamas. And so I want to get to that. But before I do, this quote here by Albert Einstein is consistent with what Chris was talking about. The world we have created, if you can put, Bahamas we have created, is a product of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. And part of what we do as part of STEM Board in our camp is to begin to change the thinking of the youth through what we do through our camp. So I'll speak about that in a moment. Next slide. I don't have the clicker, so. Oh, perfect. All right. So how many know this gentleman that's in the center of this slide? So for those who don't know, Dr. Miles Monroe, prominent minister in the Bahamas, and unfortunately his family, his wife, and others, part of his ministry, died in a plane crash. Actually, yesterday made 3 years, actually. And so for me, Dr. Miles Monroe tremendously impacted my life. As a college student, I was considering dropping out of college. And he came to my church in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Had never heard of him, didn't know who he was, but my father and I just came back from school, and he was speaking. And as they say, he sort of changed my thinking. I was studying at Southern University, physics, undergrad in physics, I have a minor in mathematics, and I was considering dropping out and quote unquote going into full-time ministry, so to speak. So I thought. And I heard Miles Monroe speak about potential, about recognizing your leadership and purpose. And I couldn't see what I really wanted to do in life in terms of impacting young people's lives. I couldn't see I could do that really through physics. And I was like, why am I doing this in the first place? I kind of lost my passion for why I was pursuing a degree in physics, And when I heard him speak, it just really changed my life, really. I mean, Miles, outside of my parents and other members of my family who encouraged me, and the grace of God, I decided not only at that night, it was a Friday night, I never forget, it was a Friday night, that night, I decided I'm not only going to get my undergrad, I'm not only going to stay in school and get my undergrad in physics and my minor in mathematics, but I'm also going to go to graduate school. Because he said one thing in his speech at my church, he said, you can be he literally said that you can be a computer scientist working in a lab or running your own company and can impact many more people than I can through you pursuing what your God-given ability, be it in science, engineering, whatever it may be. I had never heard a minister talk about that. And from that, I got all his books. I've read all his books. And thankfully, many years ago, I had a chance to visit him here in Nassau, and got all my books. Matter of fact, I have them with me, so I bought them again at his bookstore and had him sign them all and share my story with him about how he changed my life in terms of the impact he had on me and why I'm doing what I'm doing now. So the opportunity. And so the opportunity to now be part of a company that is actually inspiring young people in the Bahamas is like a dream come true for me. It's a way of me giving back to someone who had a tremendous impact on my life. And from that, I've worked in Silicon Valley. I was in Silicon Valley for about 17 years. And I worked at Hewlett-Packard. I was in wireless communications. I worked at Agilent Technologies. I started my own educational company, which is where I made that pivot. I went from being in hardcore tech, working in engineering, working in a research group on new product design, to a passion I always had, which actually started from Miles Monroe telling me how you can have an impact on the lives of young people. And I started Excel Educational Services, which is a math and science educational company that started with one child. That's why I do not despise small beginnings. I started Excel Educational Services with one student, one young lady in pre-algebra at their dinner table in Hayward, California. And that company went from having one student, myself tutoring, to hiring a group of tutors, to getting contracts with the government, to having, hiring a CEO, being able to transition out of that company and to do other things. So regardless of where you may be in your journey on this journey of innovation and entrepreneurship, do not despise small beginnings. Even as the Bahamas looks to become a tech hub, do not despise small beginnings. Because I couldn't have seen that coming when I was able to grow that company and transition out of it and do some other things. So, and it also led to me even starting a real estate company, where you see them nice, beautiful homes. I'm actually from Bahamas. I wish I had one here, but I don't. But I also started a real estate company. So my journey and what I do now is in large part, again, to the impact that Miles has had on my life. And so I thought it was important for me to share my PhD from Cornell University is in nuclear science and engineering. And when I finished my PhD, most people say I look really young, but I'm a little bit older than I may look. But I finished my PhD in 1998, actually. I was 20-something years old, and I was the only African-American male in the United States that year to get a PhD in nuclear science and engineering. So, and I always get the same response, a lot of hand claps. But in reality, that's kind of sad to be the only one, right? Because, I'm only one person. And I'm thinking that could be good and bad, because maybe it's not a field that everyone want to go into. There's no jobs or whatever, who knows? But in any case, I do what I do now because I want to inspire more people, more students, not to do what I've done necessarily, but whatever their passion, whatever their dream may be it in engineering, be it in science, be it in business, be it in marketing, whatever it may be, that to realize your full potential. So with that, I'll go to the next slide, and I'll transition to what STEM Board is about. So STEM Board is two parts. So I actually started the company with the vision of not only doing, creating smart systems for the U.S. Department of Defense, and software solutions for large private sector clients, but also she wanted to bake in at the very beginning this idea of giving back. So before I joined STEM Board, back in 2015, she had already been doing Hackett, Bahamas, and Nassau already. So we just finished our 4th year of doing this camp, and now we want to bring it to Freeport. That's how we want to bring this to Freeport. And we were speaking with Senator Thompson about how we can make that a reality. And so the educational part of what I run our educational vision. And our goal, as you see here, is really to inspire students not to be consumers of technology, because we all consume the technology. We want them to be the creators of it. Students here from Freeport, from Nassau, to be creators of technology, because that's where the opportunity really lies. Because when you're creative of technology, you can create jobs. You can change people's lives in a different way. Not saying you have to be a business owner necessarily, but we're on the other end of not only using the app, but building the app, or building the next Facebook, or building the next Google. Why can't that come from someone from Freeport? But why not? Why not? I mean, Silicon Valley doesn't have a monopoly on the best ideas, the most innovative and disruptive ideas. They don't have a monopoly on it. No parts of the country or the world have a monopoly on the best ideas. And what I've seen in working with students for the last 3 years here in Nassau, actually in Nassau at St. Andrews, where we host our camp, students come with some amazing ideas. And with that, I'm going to show a video that actually is sponsored by Alive, because they were one of our primary sponsors this past year. So the video you're going to see is give you a snapshot, about two and a half minute video of our Hack It Bahamas 2017 that we did in Nassau. And like I said, we want to bring this to Freeport.
No one does summer like we do. It's just a way of life.
Hack It Bahamas focuses on innovation. We bring together private and public school students from all over the Bahamas, and we challenge them to do one thing: build a technology that in some way can improve an aspect of Bahamian life.
Well, what I like about this program is, hey, no idea is a dumb idea. So you can say pretty much anything and have like facts behind it, and it can make it very big.
It's a chance to meet new people, and you can also expand your knowledge of certain things like engineering. And I've done things that I've never thought I'd been able to do before, and it's just amazing.
I believe that young people would be effective because it helps bring out your inventor and things you didn't know that are inside of you.
It was a great event. I want to come. I wanted it to last forever.
Alive being the sponsor of a technology week is phenomenal, because we're a technology company. We're a cutting-edge technology company. Since we launched November 23rd, all we've been trying to do is innovate. So just like how these young persons are innovating in the technologies that they did this week, we're innovating with our plans, with our solutions, with our products. We're trying to innovate with our services, and as you know, we continue to grow. So Alive is very deep in the technology. We do other events, but I think we're trying to get as much technology to the young persons as possible.
I think it's very important for people to support Hack It, because Hack It is a way for our generation to embrace their ideas.
This program is the largest free program in the country, and it is allowing the Bahamas to become a leader in the region in STEM.
The winner of Hack It 2017 is team number 5.
Okay, what we invented was, it's sort of like a little box you can hook up to your car, and you can be able to control anything inside your car with your app.
Well, it was very hard to begin with. It all started off with code and different mechanics we had to use just to demonstrate it, but the idea itself was pretty easy to create.
It's like a dream. I didn't even think we could win this. Yeah. It's great. I'm speechless.
So these young people come in on a Monday, excited. Most of them have no prior experience. And by the end of that week, they've created a prototype, and then as part of a Shark Tank style pitch competition, they pitch their ideas to a group of judges, and the top 3 teams get a cash prize. And that's just in 1 week. It's just 1 week. It's not like we have, 3 or 4 weeks for these students. These students will come in, and I say investment. They're high school students from all over the Bahamas. It's 50% female, 50% male students in the program. And when they come in the first day, we ask them, think of problems that you see in your community that you want to address. Things that oftentimes entrepreneurs scratch their own itch. Something that irks them, or they see problems in their community that they want to address that really is like, why this is a problem? Okay, great. We do this whole ideation where they go through all these problems, and then so great. You identified the problems. Now, if you want to be a mechanical engineer, you want to be an electrical engineer, a computer scientist, or you want to be an aerospace engineer, how can you come up with a solution? We put them in groups of three, about 3 to 5 students in a team, and they come up with a solution to that problem that they've agreed upon that they want to address. And then over the course of that week, they work with professional engineers who are the actual instructors, and they work through learning basic engineering concepts with the idea of building a prototype, some type of prototype before the end of that week. And they use the business model canvas as a framework to think about their solution as a value proposition. And so we walk them through this whole entrepreneurial kind of process of, great, you got this, but we got to think about the other aspects of what it takes to build, a company from just this solution to this particular problem. Right? And so you got a chance to see what some of these students are able to create. Here's the list of some of the names of the teams and projects they've worked on. One that I will highlight is electrolytes. So it was mentioned earlier about blackouts, right? And so a couple years ago, we were staying at the Atlantis, and one of our instructors actually got stuck in the elevator as we were getting ready to leave the hotel to go to the camp. I mean, it wasn't funny at the time, but it's funny now. But she got stuck, and so we were late getting there because it was a blackout. Just so happened, one of the students in the camp, one of the teens, said, what if we created an app that, in partnership with the local utility company, that could notify the residents of when they're going to be a blackout? And we charge maybe $1 to download that app, so you can know in advance. So if you have someone who is elderly or whatever, or sick, and electricity goes out, or you just bought some food and you got meat, you put it in the refrigerator, it goes out for who knows how long, and it spoils, and now you've lost the money too. So what if whatever way to notify the residents with a simple app of how that this is about to happen, so you can plan ahead. Now these are high school students, and what do they charge $1 for that? You got thousands of people. They can pay for their college. Just that simple. High school students. That's just one example. Another example, I don't have it up here, but it comes to my mind where one students, they live in an area where there was a lot of pollution from the trash being burned. And there was a higher concentration of cancer in that region. So what if we had a drone that has sensors on it that you can detect the carcinogens in the air and get a sense of whether or not it really is coming from the pollutants that are in the air? And again, these are high school students who come in thinking about problems in their own community that they feel like, if given opportunity, they could solve some of these problems, working with the government, working with local industry partners to address some of these issues. So I don't think, as I would say, we shouldn't sleep on the potential and the ideas and creativity that is latent and dormant in our youth. And so, too quick. So here, what is our vision? We strongly believe at STEM Board, Aisha and I and the rest of the team, that to really go the next level, it's going to be a joint effort. It's going to be local businesses, it's going to be the government, it's going to be us working to really take what these students can do in 1 week to the next level. And what that looks like, we want to see students not only come up with a great idea that they've started in the course of a week. We want to incubate that idea. We want to surround them with, when we leave, we want to keep the motivation, the momentum they've created over the course of that week here. We want to get local people who know. I already recruited Krista for next year, that she's going to be one of our instructors. I want to get some local, and Xerxes, we're trying to get you guys on board to actually have people locally and other engineers locally that can work with these students beyond just the 1 week camp we have. And then accelerate those ideas, put them in a position where they can get funding. They need a lot of help. They're young. They don't have all the technical expertise. But what if they partner with, some local engineers and industries that had, that align with what they were working on? And then you put them in a position through an incubator, then we can launch their companies. And you don't have to be a college graduate. You don't have to have a PhD. You can start it from right where they are, working in partnership with the local government and the local companies to see this go to the next level. That, in our mind, is the next level of this. Because we're just what we do is just a catalyst. We just get them excited. They get exposed to, we kind of change their mindset of what they may be able to do. But that's not enough, and we know that. To really have systemic change, you want to see true companies, some companies come out of what we start here. right. The next thing here is so in 2016, we did a Solar Grant Challenge sponsored by DHL, working with the local program manager in Nassau and in Cayman and in Bermuda. We did a Solar Grant Challenge. It was a real issue that DHL came to us through a connection we had with one of their managers, that they lease buildings, and they wanted to create a mobile solar solution for the building they lease in Nassau. And they wanted to make this an international competition with engineering professionals. I actually not convinced them, why not give the high school students opportunity to work on a low-level prototype that could address this. And so me and my team, we managed a Solar Grant Challenge with students from Cayman Islands, Bermuda, and the Bahamas in 2016, where they worked with a subject matter expert and came with prototypes, and the top 3 teams had an opportunity to sponsored by DHL, to come to the Bahamas and participate in our week-long hacker camp to refine their concept and idea, and they pitched their idea at the end, and the students won. I think the top 3 students, there was a total of $10,000 in prize money that the students won. Well, we want to expand that. We want to make that even something we can continue to do more of. And so that's just an example of students being able to be innovative and come up with ideas that most of them had no prior experience. They started in January of 2016, worked with the teams at their local high schools, and we identified some mentors locally, partnered them up with those mentors. They worked with them over the course of that 6 months or so. We had to write an abstract. They had to kind of map out what they were going to do, and then with a rubric, we decided which students had the best ideas, and we invited those students to come to, like I said, to Nassau to pitch the idea. And so those are the ways that STEM Board, and Aisha Bo and I and the rest of our team are really trying to strengthen educate through innovation. Educate through innovation, because we think that is at the core of how you're going to see tremendous change long term. It's starting with the generation, the younger generation. I don't think that's it. I think it's across the full spectrum, but we've chosen to focus on young people who have tremendous amount of potential, because I see a lot of myself in them when I was their age. But I didn't have the fortune of being able to participate in these kind of camps when I was that age. But being able to be in a position now to help them and inspire them, I think, has been a tremendous blessing for me, but also I think for the students and for the parents that are also involved in what we're doing. So how can you get involved? Sponsorship, cash or in-kind, serve an entrepreneurship mentor. As we work with these students over the course of the week, we want to be able to keep them engaged, as I've said before. You can volunteer. This past summer and even the previous several years, we've had University of the Bahamas students who are engineering majors actually serve as volunteers, help us in the classroom with our engineers that they're working with. So we really try to engage the local community, and we're working with the high school, the local college students here that are participating as mentors to the students. So they see some students who are not too far removed from where they are, and also came from some of the same high schools that they came from, that are also working with us as part of what we do for Hackett Bahamas, and also as instructors. Right now, our instructors, the majority of them, matter of fact, all of them right now, come from the U.S., from Intel, from, we've had some from Google. I believe we had one instructor from Google at one point, myself, one from the U.S. State Department, and these are all people who are professionals in the, who are professional engineers in electrical engineering, computer science, aerospace. And so those are the ways in which you can get involved in what we're doing. And we believe that the best way for us to see this be something that's more systemic is to have it here. To have it here, have locals train the trainer model, where we come in, we can train those who are local so that we can continue this beyond just what we can do. Because we are limited. We get about 150 plus or even more applicants for only about 75 slots. If we have the resource, we don't want to turn any student away. But we just don't have the capacity. But just imagine we train others to do hackers. Not only during the summer, but maybe when there's winter breaks, you can do hackers. You can make it an academic year programming. There's a lot more we can do to impact even more students in the community across Bahamas. So with that, I want to acknowledge our sponsor. Live has been a tremendous support along with others, as you see here, that have been, over the years, supportive of our Hackett Bahamas camp. So with that, thank you for your time, and wish you much success. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Salsa. Thanks, and make you go. All right, everybody stand up for just a moment. Come on, you know you want to stand up. You're tired sitting down. So go to the person behind you now this time and look at him. We need to get up and get going. Say it. That's right. Give you a chance to stretch a little bit. As it say to somebody else, we need to get up and get going. Thank you. You may be seated. Also want to acknowledge the presence of our students that came in during our last session and just a few months ago, Burgundy and also Gray. So let's give them a hand, those school students. Welcome. Keeping it going in the area of education and innovation, we're going to ask Larson Burrows to come at this time.
Good job. Thank you. I think he's at it. Keep him in suspense.
Let's give him a hand as he comes. Mr. Larson Burrows.
Yes, sir. Grand Bahama, born and raised.
Okay. Let's give Mr. Burrows, born and raised here from Grand Bahama, another hand.
Hello. Mic check. Could you guys hear me well? Yes. With this mic? Okay, great. Good morning, all. It's great to be home. My name is Laurent Burrows. I'm a chemical engineer in a biomass renewable energy plant in California. I was born and raised in Grand Bahama. I went to school in St. George's High School, but thank you. I now live and work in California, and one of the reasons I'm here is because of my project. So as a chemical engineer, I like to test and experiment. I test business models, and I also test chemicals. One of my most successful products or projects is UREO. Stands for Your Inputs and Your Outputs. It's a biomedical diagnostic device company. We use artificial intelligence to analyze your biological sample and determine what your potential diseases are in under a minute. To do that and to get to where I'm at right now was not easy, and it was not quick. I made a lot of mistakes early on. And hopefully through my presentation today, I can present you with a pathway to take all the inspiration that you got from this summit to actually do some work. Now, clicker. Oh, wow, that was quick. Okay, from this summit so far, the government has got a very long checklist, a very long list of action items that they need to do. That's all well and good, and that was needed to happen. But now it's time for you guys who wants to be entrepreneurs and technology entrepreneurs to get an action item list, because you no longer have an excuse. After this presentation and after the day, you no longer have an excuse. The government has their work to do, but you also have your work to do as entrepreneurs. When I first got started, I made all the entrepreneurial mistakes. I had an idea, thought it was a perfect idea. All I needed to do was just build a prototype, create a vision, find some investors, sell them on this vision, and I'm on my way to $1 million. So there I went. As a technology person, that's what you're going to do, right? You like technology, you're probably going to start building things quickly. I took an Arduino, a Raspberry Pi, slapped some sensors together, and really MacGyvered a medical diagnostic device. I found some investors to listen to me 2 weeks later, and then I went to them and pitched them on my idea. It was a panel of 6 investors from the medical diagnostic device company or industry. They loved my pitch. They believed in the vision, they saw the dream, up until the last 2 slides. And if you're doing a 10-slide template for pitching, your last 2 slides are your financials, telling them how much you need and then how much you're going to make, right? So I told them, in 2 years, I'm going to make $2 million, and all I need from you is $20,000. And they said, wow, that's a return, right? But one of the investors talked to me afterwards. I didn't get the money, by the way. One of the investors talked to me afterwards and said, you have a great idea, you really have something here, but you do not understand the market. Because you think that you could actually take a medical diagnostic device and actually go to market in under a year and then be profitable, we know you don't understand the market, right? So I went out there, I fell flat on my face trying to pitch to some investors, some experts in the area. And my talk is to hopefully cause you to avoid the same mistakes that I have. When I was at a tech conference in Michigan, it was actually a medical diagnostic conference in Michigan, 10 months later, one of those investors from the panel of 6 reached out to me saying they heard about the pivots I've made, they heard about my technology, and they wanted a meeting with me. The meeting was so that that person could ask to be hired on to my company. So how did I go from them knowing that I didn't know anything to them wanting to be a part of my company and wanting to be a part of my startup? And that's a part of my talk. So the first thing that I'll say to all you tech entrepreneurs, it is very important, put down your prototype. Put it on hold. Because I had a coach. The coach was IBM's Innovation Center Director, as well as some consultants from the Harvard Medical School. They do biomedical diagnostic devices all the time. They told me, Laurent, do you have a prototype? I would like to see the vision that you're trying to portray, right? And I said, great. Finally, someone wants to see my Arduino. Finally, someone wants to see my open breadboard and my Raspberry Pi device, right? And to my surprise, they said, no, I do not want to see it. I want you to take your prototype, put it in a box, and put it in a closet. I don't want you to see it either. Because if you made a prototype without understanding your market or your customer demographic, you made the wrong prototype, all right? And what you're going to do is you're going to take that prototype and try to sell it when you listen to your customers. When you go to businesses and you try to understand their problems, you're going to say, well, I already solved that, and here's my prototype. Right? You're not going to really be listening. So he wanted to make sure I took my prototype, put it away, lock it in a closet, and don't really look at it anymore. And then follow on to my next other slides. Ooh, wow, that was quick. Okay, so some things you're doing wrong. I think this is a good picture. But some things you're doing wrong. And you have to accept that. You have to accept that when you're getting started, you're going to learn, you're going to fail, and you're going to make mistakes. And again, some things you are doing wrong. When I first started, I had a business consultant, and she told me, Laurent, you need to make a business plan. I said, I don't know how to make a business plan. This isn't my thing. Business isn't my thing. And she said, you still need to make a business plan for someone to see your vision and for you to communicate it clearly. So there I went to my dorm room to make a fictional story, really, of how I'm going to take a medical diagnostic device company, grow it from 0 to 5,000 users in 2 years in a B2B business model and be profitable in 2 years, right? Fiction, all fiction. And when I submitted my business plan to my consultant for review, she tore it apart. Every 4 lines of text had a paragraph of commentary. And at the end of it, the last comment was, Laurent, we are signing you up for 2 classes at the University of Michigan so you can learn how to actually write a business plan and learn the business fundamentals, right? I said, okay, that's fine. At the time, I was living in Ann Arbor and working in the corporate office of my company, so it was not too far to go to. But I was open to that criticism. I was open to someone saying, Laurent, you don't know what you need to know to do this. And in the Bahamas, we have a culture of perfection almost, right? And I think it's going to be one of the things we have to tackle to really be entrepreneurs. We have to be open to say, I have an idea, but I don't completely have the concept down. Who could I go to help me, right? I was seeking out people. In the US, they have the Small Business Administration. It's perfect. It's all free. They have consultants, resources. But I was still seeking out people to grill me, tell me, what am I doing wrong? How could I do it better? So she signed me up for some classes, and that's my next slide. You have to commit to learning the fundamentals. At this time, I was already in school. I was in Kettering University doing chemical engineering classes in my senior year. And I took on 2 other business courses at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, because I needed to learn the fundamentals. You have to commit to learning the fundamentals of business and entrepreneurship if you want any idea to succeed. I mean, if you want to be an inventor in your garage and as a hobby, right, you could create things, don't really care what happens, you can do that. But if you really want to be an entrepreneur and start a business, you're going to have to commit to learning the fundamentals. I've read countless books, cover to cover, probably 5 times or more, because if you're reading entrepreneurial books, when the first time you read it, you're in the ideation phase, right? You have the idea, you're trying to figure it out. The second time you read it, you may be in the product development phase. You may see some more insights that they talk about in the product development phase. The third time you read it, you may be in the patenting phase. And you remember that this book talked about some obscure patenting strategy, and now it's helping you in every phase of your development as an entrepreneur. So it's not just getting the book, reading it once. It's reading it over and over as you go through your entrepreneurial venture. And that's important. That's key. The internet has leveled the playing field for the most part. It's now just up to you to commit to learning the fundamentals, seek out those resources, and then use them. At the end of my presentation, I'll provide you with, I think, 5 books that I've used, and I would say that helped me a lot to help you commit to learning the fundamentals as well. So the next thing is know your market. So the last slide was more of a general education of business and entrepreneurship. This is the slide where you get specific, right? If you want to be in the medical diagnostic device industry or market, what does that mean? How do products really get created? What is my market like? And to be honest, this is not the exciting part. I was reading, at the time, I was reading the Affordable Care Act to understand how this creates pressure for larger hospital institutions, right? And it was a very volatile time because it was the election. So what are the policies that the 2 candidates are going to propose that will affect and influence my business? If you don't know that, you may be creating a business when a market has completely changed, right? When policy came in and you're no longer valid. I was reading all the diagnostic device reports. I was reading probably 24 gigabytes of information on data, information, and research of who was buying this device, where were they buying it, how were they using it. Because once you do your homework, and our presenter, Shadan from Google yesterday talked about how he was tired of doing his homework, but he realized he always have to do his homework. So once you do your homework on your market, the people in your market will respect you for what you know. And they'll say, okay, this guy actually knows the market, right? He isn't going to think he's going to make a medical diagnostic device in 2 years and make $2 million, right? You've done your homework, and now you can gain some respect from the people in the industry, even though you're a chemical engineer. So do your homework and know your market. Another very important part of a technology entrepreneur's business is studying patents. Again, this is a very specific part of your education for innovation, right? General education was just the fundamentals. Specific, know your market. More specific, know your patents. At first I was studying, when I first did my prototype, I was studying the patent landscape. This is a continuous process, by the way. You don't just study patents and then you forget them. This is a continuous studying if you want to really be on the cutting edge. I found a patent that was doing something very similar to my early prototype. And I thought, in my young greenness of being an entrepreneur, I'll just contact this person. I'll say, okay, what are you doing with this patent? Do you want to sell it to me? Could I use it? Stuff like that. I didn't know much about the licensing agreements and rights at that time. But sure enough, he was a medical doctor, a practicing medical doctor. And he just was waiting for a company, large company, probably like Quest Diagnostics, to come in, look at his patent, and then purchase it from him, or either a license and agreement, right? So you'll meet people in the patent landscape that has patents that may control your technology and they don't want to commercialize it. They are in the business of license agreements. You're going to meet that, and you need to learn that pretty quickly before you create a prototype that is already patented and waste a lot of time, right? So you start with a patent overview, patent search, and then throughout your development and your pivots, you continue this. So more recently, in the last probably 6 months, a Chinese diagnostic company filed a very similar patent to what I wanted to do. But it was interesting. They filed under very weird claims, right? So this is how you have to get into the specifics of your industry. It was like if you were trying to catch the rain and you create a device called a rain catcher. This rain catcher moves horizontally in a 10-foot distance and catches the rain. And you look at that and they say, that's weird. Why would you do it that way? Why don't you just put a bucket on the floor, right? And so my technology in this space is a bucket on the floor. Although the patent will say something similar to what you're doing, you have to really get into the nitty-gritty of what they are claiming to do. Now, the patent landscape in the Bahamas is, I would say, new, probably untapped, but strapping yourself to very specialized patent attorneys can assist you in this study. I've had patent attorneys that worked for pharmaceutical companies and in the medical device industry. They're pretty good in their industry, right? They helped me out a lot. But the good thing about this is experts generally write books. And it goes back to reading again. It goes back to your education. Experts write books. They write books to show you a pathway of how to do something. They show you a pathway. So even if you may not have connection to that person, you could pick up their book and say, wow, this person in the medical device industry just laid out how to create a biomedical diagnostic device. Oh, and I probably could find them on LinkedIn, right? So that's your follow-up. This is one of the more important parts I would like to stress to my technology entrepreneurs. I spent probably 2 months on the actual technology of my business and 11 trying to find product market fit. Okay? So product market fit is the degree at which your product solves a market demand. Market demand. So there are problems in the market, like mosquito bite problems, and there are shark bite problems. How many times have you been bit by a mosquito? I don't know, a couple, right? How many times have you been bit by a shark? Exactly. You would remember if you had been bit by a shark, right? Because it's a big bite. So that's how a lot of people in the industry talk about the problem size that you are solving. Is it a nuisance problem or is it a really big problem? Is it a really big market demand for the solution you are presenting? This is very important because I know a lot of people in Silicon Valley, in California, in the United States that create apps that no one wants, websites no one uses, and products no one cares for because they did not do the studying of their customer demographic and their segments. In the 90s, there was this company. I thought it was pretty funny what they were doing. It's a good idea, great concept, but here's the company. The company is called Webvan. In the 90s, they raised over $100 million in funding, venture capital funding, record-breaking for the 90s. Their concept is you can order food online, order your groceries online, and I will deliver it to your door. Perfect. The actual founder was a technology entrepreneur, great in software. And so once he got the funding, he went directly into product development. He said, okay, I'll take this money and I will now build my software so that when you go to my website, you click order, it mobilizes robots to go through all my warehouse and my shelves to pick your grocery, put it in a bag, put it on the side for a delivery agent, right? They went through all the product development, they did everything their board of directors told them to do, and then in 11 months, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy because no one asks, where are my customers? No one asks, what would happen When my customers order milk and chocolate and it's left out in the sun? What would happen when my customers in apartments order a large shipment of groceries? What would happen with theft in different areas? What would happen with stray dogs or birds? You have food outside. What would happen if someone's at work and ordering food so that when they come home it'll be there, but they're not really there, so you're waiting, and your delivery agent is tied up? These are laughable questions, to be honest, but they could have saved that company if they had done this research on their customers and their customer demographics. And the funny part about this is there are companies in Australia, parts of Africa, as well as the United States that do this exact same thing. But they asked where their customers were. They found a specific niche of people, working professionals, who work, would like to cook, but do not have time to go to the store. And they cater to that specific market, not saying, I will go to everybody and anybody. And they are successful. They're still in business today. So I guess one lesson from that is, if you have a business model that didn't work somewhere else, you could take it to the Bahamas and it may work. That is a very commonplace thing to do in the entrepreneurial world. A lot of people, when they hear about studying your customers, a lot of tech people, they would say, why would I need to study my customers? They don't even understand my technology. I have the best technology out there. They don't even understand how I'm going to change their world. And they would say, the old age example, when Steve Jobs made the iPod, no one knew they wanted 1,000 songs in their pocket, right? That's great. But Steve Jobs and the iPod story is a very unique story. So unique, there's a book about it. It's called The Blue Ocean Strategy. So in the Blue Ocean Strategy, and I'll adapt the animals for the Bahamian Ocean, but in the Blue Ocean Strategy, if you enter a market, you have groupers, you have barracudas, you have snappers, and you have a shark, right? The size of those fish represent the size of the different companies in your market. When Steve Jobs entered the iPod market, it was a blue ocean. There was nobody in front of him. But a lot of tech entrepreneurs believe that they and their product is the new Steve Jobs, and they do not have to talk to customers. And if you believe that, I cannot convince you otherwise. I would just say let other people say that about you. Don't let it get to your head. But you still have to focus on your customers, right? The rest of the room who doesn't believe that, we have to focus on our customers. And it's very important. Again, I spent 11 months trying to find my product market fit. And if you think it's difficult, try talking to a doctor when you're telling him your technology will actually undermine his industry. Try talking to a doctor that's a urologist, making a lot of money doing his work in a very archaic process, and you say your technology will undermine his business, take clients away from him, and give customers or patients the power to actually own their own data, right? That's difficult. That's why it took 11 months. No, but really, it's difficult, and you have to do it because you do not want to create products that no one wants and apps that no one uses. So in closing, here are the resources. This is a technology event. You don't have to take notes. Take a picture of the slide. We're promoting technology. So these are the books that I come to time and time again. And they will change the way you try to implement a technology business in the Bahamas. They will. The Lean Startup, I believe, is one of the more groundbreaking ones that will culturally change business in the Bahamas, because the Lean Startup model is I create the very minimum, the minimum viable product, MVP. I create that, and then I get out there and I go and test it. I get out there and I ask my customers, would you buy this? And then they say, no, I wouldn't buy it. And you don't go back to your office. You said, okay, well, why wouldn't you buy it? What could I add to it? What problem is it solving for you? Is this not solving a problem? And then you try to help them find a solution to your problem. So you iterate. This is a constant iterative cycle as you do your product development. It's not, I'll stay in my garage, perfect a product, and then go out there and fail. The Startup Owner's Manual written by Steve Blank. He's a professor at the Stanford School of Business. He is a revolutionary person in the industry of entrepreneurial ventures and startups. He has started a course called the Customer Discovery. I've taken probably 3 of his customer discovery courses at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. It is funded by the National Science Foundation, and his whole model of customer discovery is, it's tech, something. His whole model of customer discovery is you need to get out of the building. The answers do not exist in your office. The answers do not exist in your garage. They do not exist in your head. The answers exist outside of the building. If you do not have data to back you, and even if you do, you have to go out of the building, your office, and talk to your customers. Talk to the people who will actually be the end user, the influencer, the technical buyer, or maybe the person who will sabotage your product. You have to get outside the building. It's a very revolutionary idea. Hooked. Hooked is a marketing book. When I first read Hooked, I stopped all social media because Hooked explains how you will create a website or an app that will be so addictive that you hook your customers. So it's really a psychological book about marketing and creating products and how you create very addictive products. But again, it does warn, I would say it ethically warns you to not create things that are addictive for bad reasons. But it is a great book to read for your product development of how to either engage your customers when they are interacting with your app, engage your customers on your product, probably provide perks. I mean, there's a formula as to why Candy Crush is so successful. And the person who wrote Hook studied Candy Crush and spoke with the creator of Candy Crush. There's a reason why Farmville was so successful, why Facebook is so successful, because it hooks people in. And all of that is explained in that book, and I don't want to get too much into it. The 4 Steps to the Epiphany is also written by Steve Blank. Steve Blank, the Stanford professor of School of Business. And it details strategies to product development. So strategies like outsourcing, strategies like creating it all yourself, or versus outsourcing, strategies to actually implement a business, and different business models. So if you have a business on a subscription base versus a pay-to-play based business model, it details all those strategies. The last one is the Young Entrepreneur's Guide to Starting and Running a Business. And that's self-explanatory. It is a very long book. I've read it a few times, and I said travel with this book. This is one of the books I actually bought, the physical copy of. I keep most of my books in a Kindle. But this book I actually bought because I liked it so much. And it details how you can be a young entrepreneur running and starting your business. How to not be arrogant in doing so, how to be patient with the process, and how to actually implement and start your business. So I believe with these resources, this is just a start. Again, the internet, use and leverage the internet. The internet levels the playing field for everybody. And again, the government has their checklists. It's time for you guys to have an action item list as well, right? It's time for you to get to work. Because if we want to attract businesses like Google and Apple to be here, we have to remember, WhatsApp was not created by Facebook. YouTube was not created by Google. Instagram was not created by Facebook as well, neither Oculus Rift. They were created by entrepreneurs like yourself, and they were bought by these companies and acquired by these companies. And so we cannot use the same business model that we used to attract previous businesses. We have to use a different one. We have to build it ourselves, build our own solutions, and then maybe they'll purchase our solutions when they enter the third world market. Because guess what? The thing about business is you're always looking to expand. So when Google wants to expand to the Bahamas market or the Caribbean market, and they see we've created a solution, you're going to be acquired. That's your exit. That's your happy day as an entrepreneur. So start building our own solutions here And now it's your time. It's your time to get to work. Here's your resources. The internet leverages or levels the playing field. And I would encourage you all to use the resources that were provided and enjoy the rest of this summit. Thank you.
Laron, we want you to know you are a part of us, and just listening to you as a Bahamian, we are impressed and we are proud of you equally so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before I let you go, I'm sure the young people are curious. How old are you?
I am 22 years old.
22. And you are residing now in California?
Yes, sir.
Okay, how long have you been there?
Been there for a little over a year.
A little over a year. And do you miss home?
I do.
You do?
Yes.
You still have the accent. Do you hear it from time to time? Bahamianese does come out.
Good, good.
Your very speech from time to time betrays you. You know, they got that little American thing and Bahamian thing going on. You talked about a patent. What actually is the patent for you? What is it that you created?
So I guess the broad spectrum is you take a biological sample, let's say your blood. Normally, I mean, most processes in the medical device industry or the medical industry, it's very archaic, right? They take a blood sample, they look under a microscope, some specialized person looks under the microscope, you pay him $110 an hour to do this, and he tells you, based on this blood count, you are either pre-diabetic or something like that. So my technology takes away that $110 an hour person and uses artificial intelligence to tell you you're pre-diabetic in 5 seconds.
Is your product nationally known?
No, for good reason.
You working towards that?
Yes, it's a very, it's a thin line between the FDA requirements and then the patent landscape to keep your patent protected. So you don't want to disclose too much, because if you do, you void your rights to your patent. So
now you told us you had to go, well, you were recommended to learn your business plan, to go to school to learn.
Yes.
Have you finished your course in that area?
Yes, I have, yes.
You have?
Yes.
Do you have a degree in that?
No, it's just some courses you can take. You don't even have to get the full 4-year degree. There's some courses you can take free and probably transfer some credits to do that.
Now, Laron, just before I let you go,
yep.
I'm going to let you go because my audience really want to go and stretch their legs. But we have some young people, students here. Before you go, what would be your final word to them? Because they're inspiring, they're listening to you, and they're full of innovation. What would you say to them as a 22-year-old?
Get started now. Thank you.
Okay. Grand Bahama, y'all.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
After listening to Laron Burrows, I think this is a good time for us to take a break. But while we're going out, just look at somebody. Everybody stand. Everybody stand. Look at somebody and say, we need to get up and get going in Grand Bahama. Please go on out there, stretch your legs, get some refreshment, network with some people, greet some people who you saw across the room, and let them know you're happy to be with them.